Star Wars is one of the biggest franchises in the world. There's been shows and movies with their roots in the OG story, and it has spread into massive productions with lots of writers and creators on board. Two of them are David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, who also worked on the Game of Thrones franchise too. In this video, we're going to be talking about all the insider knowledge they've revealed about the future of Star Wars. David Benioff and D.B. Weiss joined the franchise way back. The Game of Thrones co-creators first joined the Star Wars franchise a few years ago. Back in February of 2018, Disney and Lucasfilms announced that Benioff and Weiss would write and produce the trilogy of movies they were scheduled to release in 2022, 24, and 26. Because of how successful Game of Thrones was at the time, it's no surprise that Disney was trying to look for the best writers and producers for Star Wars. But things didn't exactly go Disney's way after Benioff and Weiss left the franchise before producing any movies at all. Apparently, the duo signed a $200 million deal with Netflix to produce multiple movies and TV shows. Because of this, their schedule was completely full and they had no way to write and produce for Disney and Netflix at the same time. Even though Benioff and Weiss left the Star Wars franchise, they said they'd forever remain indebted to the saga that changed everything. They also said they would have loved to continue working on the Star Wars movie, but could not do justice to both Star Wars and our Netflix projects. The head of Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, also had some great things to say about the two co-creators, saying that they're one of the best storytellers she's ever met. She also said she hopes they can return to the franchise after they're done with their busy schedule because of Netflix. Their departure wasn't as sudden as it seems. The Game of Thrones co-stars weren't the only ones that suddenly left the Star Wars universe out of nowhere. There were a number of other filmmakers that left the franchise around the same time. Phil Lord and Christopher Miller were the directors for the Han Solo Star Wars spin-off, but they ended up leaving because they had different views on how the story should progress from Kathleen Kennedy. Phil Lord and Christopher Miller were the filmmakers for some of the Lego movies, so it was super surprising to hear that they wouldn't be continuing the spin-off. Something similar happened to Colin Trevorrow, who also left Lucasfilms after he and Kathleen disagreed on how Star Wars 9 would continue. According to Colin, when he first started pitching the ideas for the film, everyone was on the same page. But as time went on and more people started working for Lucasfilms, the main idea was completely lost. It seems like most of the time, the director's vision for Star Wars would clash with Kathleen Kennedy's, which would result in them leaving the franchise altogether. Many think that this could have possibly been one of the reasons why the Game of Thrones co-creators decided to go with Netflix's offer rather than Lucasfilms. What are they doing right now? Currently, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss are working on a couple of movies and TV shows for Netflix, but the first few coming out are called Metal Lord and The Three Body Problem. They've been giving these films all their attention, which is why they couldn't focus on the Star Wars trilogy at all. Here's what Metal Lords and The Three Body Problem is all about. Metal Lords. Metal Lords is a teen music drama movie which is produced by David Benioff and written by D.B. Weiss. The plot of the movie is about three high schoolers who try to start a metal band in order to win the battle of the band. But the three of them have way too many problems and are almost always arguing with each other. If the trio never end up working out their differences, they can say goodbye to ever winning the battle of the bands. The three never really fit in with the rest of their classmates who would have been listening to the hottest pop stars like Ed Sheeran and Justin Bieber. The movie will also go over how some people use heavy metal as a coping mechanism to vent out their rage against difficult things that could be happening in someone's life. Weiss also said that as a teenager, he always felt confused and out of control. Heavy metal is the kind of armor that the high schoolers wear to hide away from the cruel world. The Three Body Problem. The Three Body Problem is actually a fictional novel series from the early 2000s by Liu Cixin. The novel is about the first time humans got into contact with aliens. The show will be set during China's Cultural Revolution, where the secret military sends a few signals into space with the hopes of contacting aliens. Aliens actually do manage to receive the signal. However, they start planning to completely take over the world. Apparently, the aliens the humans managed to contact were on the brink of destruction. They had no hope for their world until the signal from Earth came to them at the perfect time. On the other hand, the military starts forming camps so they can either welcome the aliens into Earth or get ready to face them off. The story will follow Ye Wenji, an astrophysicist who was imprisoned by the military, but she later gets recruited by the military themselves so they can send the spy satellites they sent up into space. While working for them, she finds out that she can actually enhance the radio waves which are inside the sun and send literal messages into space. So just 8 years later, she becomes the first person ever to make contact with an alien from the planet of Trisolaris. Even though the aliens sent back a warning that they would invade Earth, Yi responded anyway, and that's when the whole journey begins. Replaced by a totally different visionary. Right after the co-creators left the Star Wars universe, Kevin Feige took over. Kevin is Marvel's creative officer and has already made $25 billion in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. While it's not exactly confirmed which Star Wars movie Kevin will be in charge of, with the timing, it seems like he will be producing the Trilogy instead of the Game of Thrones co-creators. After Kevin suddenly joined in to produce the movies, many fans have been worried if this really is the end for David Benioff and D.B. Weiss in the Star Wars franchise, especially since Kevin has working relationships with Taika Waititi and Jon Favreau, who are already in the Star Wars franchise as well. Fortunately, Lucasfilm still hasn't confirmed if Kevin really will be producing the trilogy, but we do know that he's in charge of at least one Star Wars movie. So there's still some hope for everyone's favorite duo to come back and take over. Is there any chance of them coming back to the Star Wars franchise? After all this, fans are wondering if David Benioff and D.B. Weiss will ever return to producing the upcoming Star Wars movies. Recently, D.B. Weiss was asked if he would ever return to the franchise. He responded saying he's already way too stressed out working on Metal Lords and the Three-Body Problem. He even said that it's taking up to 150% of his attention span. When Weiss was asked if he would ever work on it in the future, he replied, "I manage expectations about my mental capacity." Even though the two keep saying that they won't be working on the Star Wars movie anytime soon, fans still have some hope left. Maybe one day, when they don't have that many projects left, they might just go back to the franchise. With Metal Lords premiere right around the corner, they'll only have a Three-Body Problem to work on. The Star Wars trilogy won't be coming out until a few years from now anyway, so they have plenty of time. On top of that, even Kathleen Kennedy said she'd love to work with them after their schedule clears up a bit. They won't work on Game of Thrones spin-offs. One of the biggest reasons why everyone thinks that David Benioff and D.B. Weiss will be returning is because the two announced that they would not be working on any HBO spin-offs at all. This is probably because of the criticism Game of Thrones Season 8 received. They probably don't want to be associated with that show any longer. David Benioff and D.B. Weiss said they've spent over 11 years working on Game of Thrones, and while they had a lot of fun, they think it's time to move on. The two want to try out new stories and be creative. Now that they don't have to work on any Game of Thrones related movies or TV shows any longer, the two should have some extra time. Maybe in a couple of years, the co-creators could have time for some more Star Wars movies, but only time will tell. That's a wrap for today's video. Do you think the Game of Thrones creators will be returning for the Star Wars movies? Make sure to let us know in the comments down below. As always, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and click the subscribe button for more videos like this one. We'll see you next time.